Hello there, my name is Matthew Vandeputte or Vandeputte. I have been a professional time-lapse photographer for the last 8 years, and today I'm teaching you the basics of time-lapse photography using the LUMIX S1 full-frame mirrorless camera. Before we begin, let's go over the basics of time-lapse photography. So traditionally, time-lapse sequences are shot as a series of photos, and afterwards they're turned into a high-resolution video file. These photos are shot over an extended period of time at a fixed interval. Some time-lapses only take 10 minutes to shoot. Other time-lapses can take hours, days, or even months. The reason we record time-lapses as a series of photos and not as a video file is because when shooting photos you get much higher resolutions, you use less battery, you use less storage, you get more dynamic range, and so many more reasons. Now let's set up and shoot a basic time-lapse sequence. In this case, the surrounding light will remain static or the same. In another video I'll explain to you how to shoot a sunset or a sunrise time-lapse where the light is changing. Turn your camera's mode dial to manual and change to the dedicated time-lapse and stop-motion shooting mode. Point your camera at your subject, find a nice composition, make sure your subject is in focus, and then flick to manual focus. Make sure that you're shooting raw photos with a fixed ISO, white balance, aperture, and shutter speed. Your settings will obviously differ per situation, but you can use your histogram or your light meter to figure out if you're over or underexposed. You also want to disable image stabilization on both the lens and the sensor. You can change the shooting aspect ratio, but I recommend shooting at 3:2, which gives you all of the pixels on the sensor and gives you the option to reframe later on. Because you're in the dedicated time-lapse and stop-motion shooting mode, once you hit the menu button, your camera will automatically open up the time-lapse menu. Now let's have a look at all these settings. Because we are shooting a time-lapse, we're obviously selecting the time-lapse shooting mode. Stop motion is covered in one of my other videos, so make sure you don't miss that one. Shooting interval setting is set to on, which means that you decide the frequency with which the camera will shoot its photos. When you turn this off, the camera will just shoot as fast as it can until it can shoot no more. The start time allows you to set a time in the future when you want your time-lapse shot to start recording. I usually am shooting in the moment, so let's set it to now so we can start shooting straight away. Set your image count to how many photos you want to shoot. You can obviously choose how many you want, but I recommend at least 300 photos per sequence. Your shooting interval can be a minimum of 1 second and a maximum of 99 minutes and 59 seconds. The exposure leveling mode will be covered in the advanced time-lapse shooting tutorial, so let's leave it off for now. Choosing the interval with which your camera will shoot every photo depends on your subject, but here's a guideline. 1 second for people or traffic, 3 seconds for cityscapes, landscapes, and clouds, and about 6 seconds or more for sunsets or sunrises. You can always speed up your video afterwards, but it's much harder to slow time-lapses down later on. Ideally, your exposure time or your shutter speed is half the length of your interval. So say you're shooting with a 2-second interval, you want your shutter speed to be 1 second. You might need an ND filter for this, but if you're just starting out with time-lapses, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Once your settings are dialed in and you're happy with your composition and you've double-checked your focus, just hit the shutter button and the camera will start shooting. I recommend disabling live view by clicking the display button, as this will save you some battery life. You can hit the Q or the play button to pause or finish your sequence if you want to. Once your shot is finished, your camera will give you the option to create a completed video file in camera. I've made a different video about that, so make sure you watch that one to get the complete rundown. My name is Matthew, and this was the basics of time-lapse photography with the LUMIX S1.